Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I have our resident expert here with me to help break this all down.
Hey there! Yeah, I am really excited for this one.
Seriously, because today's mission is, frankly, a little unnerving. We's going to analyze a highly sensitive set of internal documents, and this includes a system briefing, a video script outline, and some visual assets that are, well, pretty wild.
Oh, absolutely wild.
What they detail is this massive technological shift happening in the year 2026. Basically, the scheduled death of the smartphone.
Yeah, which sounds dramatic, but that's exactly what's in the text.
Right. So for you listening, I want to set the stage visually. Imagine a thumbnail image. A glowing wireframe human figure. Its arm is outstretched, but instead of holding a piece of glass, like a phone, it's touching this brilliant, sparking point of light.
Just directly connecting to it.
Exactly. And that light connects directly to a massive floating brain that is completely encased in this dense, intricate digital network.
Like a web of glowing lines.
Yeah. And the lines are linking these tiny, floating padlocks, gears, message icons. And according to sources, this isn't sci-fi concept art, it's an actual schematic.
Yeah, it's a structural blueprint. What we are looking at in these documents is a complete abandonment of the tech we currently use.
Which is huge.
Right. The transition being mapped out here is a shift away from tactile glass interfaces, the screens you tap and swipe all day.
Yeah.
And it's moving toward direct, high-bandwidth neural arrays. The explicit goal here is to just bypass the physical body entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the thing that immediately jumps out from these sources is like the absolute certainty of the tone.
Oh, yeah, it's very clinical.
Right. They treat this impending shift as a completely clinical structural reality.
Yeah.
The architects behind these documents genuinely believe our current devices are just fundamentally broken.
They do. They lay out this core thesis right at the beginning, which they call the skeletal bottleneck.
The skeletal bottleneck. I mean, what a phrase.
It really is. It's a fascinating way to reframe how we think about our own biology, really.
How so?
Well, the human brain operates with roughly 100 billion neurons, right? It's this astonishing biological engine.
Yeah.
It can process complex abstract thought, render images, formulate language, all in a fraction of a millisecond.
It's your processing power.
Exactly. But to get any of that brilliant processing power out of your head and into a digital format, that massive neural network is forced to wait for your hand.
It's forced to wait for, muscles and bones to do the work.
Yes. You have to physically type it out.
It's like having a state-of-the-art supercomputer,
Sure.
right? But you're forcing it to communicate with the world through a 1990s dial-up modem.
That is a perfect analogy.
Like the brain knows what it wants to say instantly, but the fingers are just, blooping along at a snail's pace.
Right? Hunting and pecking at the glass.
But, I have to push back a little on this framing.
Sure.
Is swiping really that bad? My thumbs are pretty fast.
Oh, we all think we're fast.
Right, but people like tactile feedback. Mechanical keyboards are hugely popular for a reason, There's a physical satisfaction to swiping and tapping.
There is, yeah.
So are these tech giants really betting billions of dollars that will just, give up the physical sensation of interacting with the world just to type a few milliseconds faster?
What's fascinating here is how the operator persona in the briefing directly addresses that attachment to physical devices.
Oh, they actually talk about it.
They do, but from an engineering perspective, human comfort with a keyboard is completely irrelevant to them.
Wow.
Yeah, the text explicitly refers to our smartphones as primitive artifacts.
Primitive artifacts, that's brutal.
Right. They don't see the satisfying click of a mechanical keyboard. They only see what they call tactile friction.
Tactile friction. So they view the physical act of typing as a literal drag on the system.
Exactly that. Every millimeter your thumb has to travel to reach a letter on a screen. Every fraction of a second it takes for that electrical signal to travel from your brain, down your spinal cord, into your arm, and cause a muscle to contract.
That's all just lag to them.
Yes. It is wasted data throughput. To an engineer building a high-bandwidth future, biological movement is just lag.
That is so wild.
The briefing actually calls the human thumb an evolutionary anchor. It's holding back the true potential of the digital network.
An evolutionary anchor, jeez.
You might feel fast when you text, but compared to the speed of synaptic firing, you are crawling.
Which, naturally begs the question, if the physical movement of our thumbs is the anchor slowing us down, the logical next step is eliminating movement entirely, right?
You have to bypass the hand.
But historically, when we hear, like, neural interface, we picture clinical trials, drills, microchips being implanted directly into the brain.
Yeah, very invasive surgery.
But the script outline we have specifically notes a pivot away from that, right?
It does. It's a huge shift.
Yeah. Because the technology rolling out in 2026 is non-invasive. They refer to it as sovereign hardware.
Yes, sovereign hardware represents a massive leap in how we capture brain activity. They were describing these high-fidelity wearable crowns.
Wearable crowns. So you just put it on your head like a hat.
Essentially, yes. And the mechanics of how these non-invasive crowns operate is where the real paradigm shift happens.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, we aren't talking about those old, blurry EEG caps you might see in a hospital.
The ones with all the messy wires and gel.
Right, those just pick up general waves of brain activity. These crowns are high-density sensor arrays designed to specifically map the motor cortex right through the skull.
Through the skull. So how does that actually work in practice? If I'm not physically moving my hand, how does the crown know what I want to type?
So think about the biological process of movement. When you decide to move your thumb to strike the glass of your phone,
Okay.
your motor cortex fires a specific synaptic spike, an electrical command. The wearable crown is calibrated to intercept that exact electrical signature. It reads the command at the source, translates it into digital code, and executes the action on the network before the biological signal even reaches your thumb.
Wait. Before it reaches the muscle.
Exactly, before the muscle even twitches.
That is staggering to think about.
It really is.
The system knows your intent before your muscles even have time to react. I want to put that into a real-world context for you listening. Just think about your morning routine.
Right, imagine you're at the kitchen table.
Yeah, you're sitting there with a cup of coffee and an urgent email comes in. Right now, you have to put down the mug, pick up your phone, the primitive artifact, and physically type out, "Sounds good, I'll review the deck." But with a wearable crown, you just formulate the intent to send that specific sequence of words.
You just think the command.
The crown intercepts the motor command and broadcasts the formatted text instantly. Your hands never leave your coffee mug. We are moving from the era of inputting data to the era of broadcasting intent.
Broadcasting intent. That is exactly it. And the documents label this specific transition the skeletal bypass.
The skeletal bypass.
Yeah.
Because you're cutting the skeleton right out of the loop.
Entirely. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, broadcasting intent isn't just about answering emails hands-free while you drink coffee.
Oh, right. It goes way deeper.
Much deeper. The briefing's metadata explicitly links this sovereign hardware to a sovereign AI strategy.
Okay, unpack sovereign AI for me. How does that change the equation here?
Well, currently, when you ask an AI a question on your phone, your request travels over a network to a massive distant server farm somewhere, right?
Yeah, processes it and sends it back.
Exactly, and that involves latency. But a sovereign AI implies a localized, self-contained artificial intelligence that operates in tandem with your sovereign hardware.
Oh, so it's right there with you.
Right. The crown reads your synaptic intent and feeds it directly into a localized AI.
Creating like a closed loop.
A completely closed, zero latency loop between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. There is no physical mediator anymore.
No screen.
No screen, no keyboard, no network delay.
Just pure instantaneous execution. I mean, it's no wonder they look at a piece of glass and see a dinosaur.
Exactly.
But introducing a closed loop like that between the human brain and a localized AI, I mean, that requires so much more than just a clever new gadget.
Oh, it requires an entire infrastructure overhaul.
Right. You cannot simply drop a neural crown into the current tech market and expect society to adapt.
Yeah.
Shifting away from screens entirely requires a fundamental rewiring of the global economy.
And the sources provide a very detailed roadmap for exactly how that economic rewiring is already taking place.
Which is crazy to read.
It is. We are looking at a massive industrial pivot. The major tech giants aren't just experimenting with neural interfaces in a lab somewhere.
No, they are actively preparing their supply chains to abandon hardware displays entirely.
They are.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The documents explicitly tell us to, follow the money, and they point toward a completely new business model.
Right, because think about it. If you aren't selling people a new glass rectangle every 2 years, how do you maintain your revenue?
Exactly. And the answer is buried right there in the metadata tags. They use terms like Neuralink 3.0 and BCI 2026, BCI standing for Brain-Computer Interface.
Yes.
The industry is pivoting away from selling devices and moving entirely toward Neuralink subscriptions.
A subscription model fundamentally changes the relationship between the user and the technology.
How so?
Because you are no longer purchasing a tool that you own and operate, you are renting access to a neural pathway.
Renting your own connection.
Exactly. You are subscribing to the bandwidth required to connect your motor cortex to the digital world.
That is just wow. And there's a specific heavily capitalized initiative mentioned in the video script outline called the Capital Clarity Link.
Yes, that part is crucial.
It details how oceans of private credit are flowing into, and this is a quote, reshoring neural infrastructure, specifically in the UK and the US.
Right.
Let's translate that corporate speak for a second. Reshoring means pulling manufacturing and infrastructure out of global supply chains, building it domestically, right?
Correct.
So why the sudden rush to build neural infrastructure on domestic soil?
Because the nature of the infrastructure is changing. It's moving from basic consumer electronics to critical cognitive infrastructure.
Cognitive infrastructure.
Right. Currently, tech companies control the hardware, the screens, which makes them the gatekeepers of what you see.
Sure.
But if the interface moves into the mind, the companies that facilitate that connection become the literal gatekeepers of your neural bandwidth.
Which is terrifying.
Governments and private equity firms recognize that owning the supply chain for human thought is a matter of profound national security.
Oh, absolutely. And economic dominance.
Yeah, you don't want the hardware that reads the motor cortex of your citizens manufactured across a fragmented global supply chain.
Right. You want it locked down tightly at home.
Exactly.
It's a complete repositioning of power. They're basically building the toll roads for human intent.
That's a great way to put it.
If you own the ground and you control the localized sovereign AI and you charge a monthly subscription for the connection, I mean, you essentially own the speed of human thought.
You do.
Which is undeniably brilliant from a business perspective, but it immediately introduces a terrifying set of vulnerabilities.
No, entirely. Because when you rewire a global economy around reading and executing synaptic spikes, the risks scale at the exact same exponential rate as the network speeds.
So what does this all mean for us? I mean, for you listening, for all of us. The briefing contains a dedicated section on ethical guardrails, right?
It does, yeah.
And it basically revolves around one central, highly provocative question. If synaptic firing becomes the new keyboard, how is privacy redefined?
That is the core issue, because we are deeply accustomed to privacy existing as a physical boundary. You have an internal monologue, and you have a physical filter, your mouth, your hands, that decides what parts of that monologue become external action.
Like a natural buffer.
Yes, you can choose not to speak. You can choose to stop typing. The physical body provides a buffer between intent and execution.
And that buffer is exactly what disappears with the skeletal bypass.
Completely.
Think about how many times you started typing an angry message to a colleague or a friend, stared at the words on the screen, and then just deleted it.
We've all been there.
Right. The tactile friction we talked about earlier. That friction actually saves us from our own impulses sometimes.
It does.
But if the wearable array translates my intent, the absolute millisecond the electrical spike hits my motor cortex, that protective cap just vanishes.
Yes.
The distance between thinking about doing something and the machine actually executing it drops to zero. That is a terrifying level of access.
This raises an important question, though, about how the documents handle this specific concern.
How do they handle it?
Well, it's perhaps the most revealing part of the entire leak. The clinical tone returns in full force here.
Of course it does.
They do not treat the loss of cognitive privacy as a crisis to be solved. They frame it as an inevitable trade-off.
Just the cost of doing business.
Exactly. In fact, the briefing calls this transition the final migration into human consciousness.
The final migration. I mean, they're literally charting a course out of the physical world.
They are. The verdict in the script outline states, and I quote, "The interface isn't in your palm anymore, it's in your consciousness."
Wow.
They view the merging of the biological neural network and the digital network as the ultimate, inescapable destination of human-computer interaction.
So they just don't care about the privacy aspect.
The concerns about internal privacy are treated almost like legacy complaints.
Like complaining about losing a headphone jack.
Exactly, like the kind of trivial things people worried about before they experienced the sheer, frictionless power of rendering 3D models purely through thought.
Or communicating complex data sets instantly.
Right. Once you experience that, they assume you won't care about the privacy loss.
It's a staggering compromise. They're essentially saying, yes, you forfeit the privacy of your internal impulses, but in exchange, you become a god in the digital realm.
That's the pitch.
Which brings us full circle back to that incredible thumbnail image attached to the briefing, the glowing wireframe human figure.
Yeah.
They aren't held down by an evolutionary anchor. They've completely bypassed the physical skeleton, pouring their intent directly into that massive, networked artificial brain.
And that image serves as the architectural blueprint for 2026.
It really does.
The glass smartphone in your pocket is a transitional fossil to them, a dinosaur. The creators of this sovereign hardware are actively engineering its extinction because they believe the human desire for absolute, frictionless speed will easily overpower our nostalgic attachment to physical devices.
And our traditional notions of cognitive privacy, too.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered a massive amount of ground today, tracking the evolution of this tech from a 100 billion neuron bottleneck all the way to localized sovereign AI.
It's a lot to process.
It is. But the core takeaway from these leaked documents is undeniable. The tech industry is betting billions on the death of tactile friction and the birth of the skeletal bypass.
The era of inputting data is ending. The era of broadcasting intent is beginning.
So we have to ask you directly, is your consciousness ready for the final migration? Because according to the architects of this system, it is arriving whether your thumbs are ready to give up their primitive artifacts or not.
It's coming fast.
It really is. But before we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final lingering thought I want to leave you with, and it builds on that macroeconomic shift toward Neuralink subscriptions we talked about.
Right, the subscription model.
Yeah, we discussed how the entire industry is pivoting from selling hardware to renting neural bandwidth. Well, think about how subscriptions function in your life right now. What happens if your credit card expires? Or, if you lose your job and simply cannot afford the monthly premium?
Right. Your Netflix account gets locked.
Exactly. Now imagine a near-future reality, perhaps a boardroom in 2027, where every single one of your colleagues is communicating, computing, and accessing data at the frictionless speed of thought.
They're all networked in.
They are broadcasting intent instantly. What happens to you if your neural subscription lapses?
Wow.
Do you pull out a piece of glass and start frantically tapping with your thumbs while everyone else is already 10 steps ahead?
You'd be totally left behind.
Does losing your neural link effectively lock you inside the slow, disconnected prison of your own physical body? In a society that operates at the speed of synapses, does your very ability to think and communicate at an acceptable baseline become a premium feature that you can no longer afford?
That is a terrifying thought to leave on.
It is, but it's where the documents point. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive into the final migration.
Thank you for listening. Keep questioning the systems being built around you.